Hi, Reza. It's Harlan Ferguson, student number 101133838, part of your Tuesday 11 a.m. class. And this is my submission for assignment 3. So I wrote it in a Python file instead of doing a Jupyter notebook, just because I'm more comfortable doing that. And then I have all the code here, and I've already pre-run it. So I'm just going to go through each item and explain what's going on. I start out, I import both pandas and numpy, and I'll explain the numpy later on. And then I make a new variable for my data frame and then read in the test.csv. There seem to be two different test CSV files. I selected this one from the submission folder because it matched the column headers the best, whereas the other one had extra columns. So I just believe it was just a miscommunication there or something. So I've got this one here, and then so for our first task is just to load that there, and then for our second task is just to print the first 5 rows. So we just use the head method within the data frame object, and then for step number 3, I then assign all the column names. So we have ID, range, value, machine type, and zip code. So I use this attribute here to do that. And then for step 4, we're looking at adding our student name to the data frame, but not in the local CSV. So what I've done here is I've made a new data frame called my info. And then this is where I chose to use NumPy, because I found that if you don't use these this NumPy not a number variable, or not a variable, this would be, I'm assuming that is a method, but it's probably an attribute. But if you don't use this, the type of, or the D type doesn't display properly. So I just use this, and then as part of 4, I then use the pandas concatenate to take my new data frame and concatenate it into the pre-existing one. So then for step 4, we're just printing the first 5 again, just to show that it's updated. So down here, you can see I've got my student number and name in there. And then again, we now use ilock, and we're just going to skip the first row and then just look at everything afterwards. To go to the head again, and then you can see my student name is missing. So that's all fine. Then for 6, we're just looking at the different data types of each column. So we've got an int, some floats, and then we've got some objects. Then here I'm making a series of just the volume column, and we're using an OOP approach to do it on line 33. And then there's a dot notation approach, which does the same thing in this case, that I stored in these 2 different variables. Then for 8, we show that the data type for that one series is a float 64. Then for step number 9, I reassign this variable to have the zip code series in it instead. And then this is where doing dot notation would not work, because with the current column name, we have a space character. So I have it commented out here, but if we try to do it, we'd have an error just because Python isn't understanding what code is supposed to mean. So if we had some kind of underscore, or if we used some kind of camel case, that would be fine. But since we're not doing that, dot notation will not work with this type of naming convention. But we'll see later on when we change that, everything would be fine. So then for 9, then we're just asked to print. So I just have it printing an object. For 10, same kind of thing. We're isolating a series. So we take a machine. We're also taking a zip code. And then I'm adding them together here into a brand variable, and then I'm just printing the head of brand. So then we can see that that concatenated nice. So I've got the machine code or the machine type here, and then the zip code there. We go on to 11. 11 asks to make another variable, and this time we're taking the range series, we're multiplying it by the value. So then if we look at the head of total under 11 here, we're getting the correct output. And then what I was doing, it didn't specifically ask for this, but then we had to do work on the entire data frame later on that needed this. So I just assumed that this would be the point in the assignment where we would just add these columns to our existing data frame. So that's what I do in lines 49 and 56. Then for 12, we're printing all these different outputs. So we have head method, describe method, and then a describe attribute, shape attribute, and data type attribute. And then we were asked why describe with parentheses and without we're giving different outputs. So with parentheses is a method call, which is why we're getting, well, I'll just show the output here. So the head we're already used to, we've done that a bunch. The describe is a method call, and what describe does is it takes the numerical columns and then it does statistical calculations on them. So you see we have a count, we have a mean, a standard deviation, a minimum, and then we've got different percentiles as well as a max. And then when we go to the attribute call, we get this instead. We get bound method and the frame. So we're actually just pointing to the attribute itself instead of calling a method. Sorry, I misclicked here. So that's why the output's a little weird. And then so we get that we're just pointing to this attribute, but don't actually print anything of value. And then Python just decides to then just print the data frame. So we just have the first 5 and the last 5 here. So that's what's happening there. And then if we go to the shape, that's an attribute of a data frame. So we would get the shape here. So we have 950 rows, 7 columns, and then the data types. So we've done this previously before, so we've already seen this. But these are attribute calls to the data frame. Think of it as like a class, like proper OOP structure. Let's see, moving on to 13. What are we doing here? So we're describing, and then we're just including object data types. So for 13, we get that output there. And then for 14, we're renaming the column, but we're just doing it. It's not saving because we're not using this in place flag. So on 14 here, you can see that my ID was successfully renamed for printing that out. And then when I went down to number 15, then you can see when we call head a second time, after we use the in-place flag, we actually properly changed the column name. So now if you go to 16, we're just printing out the column names. So what we set earlier in, I believe, question number 5. And then for question number 17, we're actually going to be renaming the columns. So we've just got the columns here. We have to use the name that we are currently using, or else there will be an error because pandas won't be able to find the actual column we're trying to refer to. And then we're just using the current name and then giving it what we want it replaced with. And then we're displaying those columns again. So in 17, you can see that we successfully replaced everything there. And then in 18, we're then adding just this underscore as well. So now thinking back to before, if we use that dot notation, now that would work. So exciting stuff. Then if we go to 19, So 19, we're just dropping the brand and total columns. So that successfully executes. And then for 20, we are dropping, let's see here, 20. Just trying to remember, we're dropping row 2 and row 4. And then since we remove row 2 and 4, the indexes aren't properly aligned anymore. So then we call this reset index method of the data frame, and then it resets every single row's index so that we're no longer missing 2 and 4. Or else if you read down the CSV, you'd be missing those indices. Then on 21, we're looking at the value column and we're just sorting there. So if we look at 21, we're looking at all the values. Oh dear, I misclicked again. There, so we're sorting all the values. So you can see we're starting from small and going up large. So our smallest is a 10, and we have multiple 10s, and then it's just showing that it's kind of sporadic throughout the entire CSV. So our first one's nearly at the end, and then we go to the middle, and then near the end again, and near the front, and it goes all the way down until we're fully sorted there. Then if we go to 22, so we're sorting values, and we're sorting by value. So same thing, we're just from lowest to greatest, those values in series of the entire data frame. And then in 23, we're sorting the values, and then we're keeping it that way because we're doing it in place. In 24, we're sorting the values by the range, and once it's sorted by range, we then sort by value, and we sort in range ascending. So it's sorted in ascending order for range, and then sorted in descending order for value. And then we print that for 24. For 25, we are grabbing all of the rows where the range is greater than or equal to 250 and less than or equal to 350. So in 25, we've got that printout there. So you can see 268, that's greater than 250, going all the way through. I keep on misclicking, that's annoying. And then 26. So we're doing the same. We're doing the same range. We're getting the same amount of rows, and then we're filtering that by range. So then we see the difference here. It's kind of just going all over the place for the data frame, and then here we're doing it in ascending order. Then for 27, same thing. We're doing a range between 250 and 350, and then let's just see here. So we're sorting by range 250, 350, and then ID and value. So we're sorting on the range, and then also in ascending order by ID and value. For 28, in that same range, and then for machine type, it has to be H. So we're only going to see H-type machine types in a sorted value and within the appropriate range. Sorry, it's all a mouthful. And then for 29, we're selecting the machine type, and then I just have a quick little list over here where we have H, R, and X. So then it'll show all of the rows of machine type HR and X. And then for 30, same thing, we're just showing the data types again. And then we're just showing the numerical columns. All right, so that is assignment 3. Thank you very much and take care.